lions, tigers, and a self-made dead millionaire. Now, if that intro doesn't excite you, I don't know what will. So today we're going to be talking about the topic of whether Miss Carol Baskin, tiger cat breeder and owner of the Big Cat Sanctuary, killed her late husband Don Lewis and fed him to her tigers for his multi-million-dollar fortune that is being discussed and joked about between our generation ever since this quarantine took place. I'm here to give you the rundown and the evidence as to why she did in fact kill her husband Don Lewis, and hopefully I'll be able to persuade you into believing the same exact thing. So first, we'll be discussing the backstory and relationship between the two. Second, I'll be talking about the people who believe in this statement and the significance of their beliefs towards the accusation. And finally, I'll be wrapping it up with a review of both sides of the story, a personal testament from Carol Baskin, and a review of all the information that I had previously given you in this persuasive argument. Alright, so to start off, the life of Miss Carol Baskin. Carol Baskin was born on June 6th of 1961 in Bexar County, Texas, to a Christian household family with about 2 to 3 siblings. Now, she had a pretty easy life. She grew up in a Christian household. They were pretty strict with their daughters, didn't let them act out of their means, out of their lines, and things like that. However, when she was 14 years old, Miss Carol Baskin was raped by knife point by 3 men. And her parents, this is crazy, her parents, her mother and father, believed it was her fault because of the way that she dressed. Now, I'm not a father, but I would never say that to my daughter if that happened. That's ridiculous. But they did say, in fact, that she led them on, and that gave them the motive of, okay, let's do this, and she was raped by knife point by 3 men. So after that happened, she ran away from home, and she was in between Florida and Maine before returning back to Florida when she was 17 years old. So she was gone for about 3 years. So when she got back at 17 years old, roughly 17 and a half, 18, she got a job at a small department store. Okay, now at that department store, she met her first husband, which was Mitchell Murdoch. Mitchell Murdoch was the owner of this department store, which she worked at. And he also owned and bred Himalayan and Persian cats. Now, when she met him, they started to run this little business together. They started to breed these exotic animals, which was illegal, but it did bring in a lot of money. So after they started breeding some of their cats, she had her first daughter with Mitchell Murdoch. Moving on throughout the relationship, she noticed that Mitchell Murdoch was a little more abusive. He got more and more abusive as the time went on. So when she was about 19 years old, she left very upset one evening because he had hit her and threatened her and things of that nature, and started walking down the side of a road at about 12 to 2 in the morning, I want to say. So when she was walking down this road, according to the Daily Mail, Don Lewis pulled up to the side of her, on the side of the road, told her to get in the car if she needed a ride, saying things like that. And she refused about 2 or 3 times until he gave her the ultimatum of, if you get in the car, you can hold this gun to me and we can have a conversation. So, for some reason, she got into the car, held the gun to Don Lewis, and they just drove around. They drove around, they talked, and then they eventually shacked up in a hotel room locally. And that is how Miss Carol Baskin and her late husband, Don Lewis, met. Alright, so, Don Lewis, a little bit of a backstory. He's a self-made millionaire. He has a huge fortune. He runs his own little businesses. He's an entrepreneur. He does a lot of things, but a main thing that he does is he also breeds and owns a lot of Himalayan and Persian cats, a lot of exotic animals, from monkeys to snow leopards to lions, tigers, bears, oh my, everything. Okay? So this guy is in the same business as her previous husband, Mitchell Murdoch. So after they shacked up that night, they decided in 1991 that they were going to marry. So they divorced their previous spouses. They remarried in 1991 and moved in with each other. All right. So their relationship was pretty well. They grew an empire. They started breeding and doing all these things with exotic animals, and then things started to take a turn for the worse. Don Lewis was a very secretive man. Um, According to Alberto Luperone, um, Carol Baskin and her late husband didn't have that great of a relationship. It was rocky because of the fact that he was a secretive person. He kept his finances to himself. He kept relationships with other women to himself. He wasn't that great of a man, but he was a smart man in keeping what he kept secret. So, because he kept those things secret, Carol Baskin had a feud with that. So one evening, she said, you need to do this, you need to give me this, you need to start allowing me to have access to the bank accounts. If you're not going to do this, get out of the fucking house. And, excuse my profanity, but she held him at gunpoint with a shotgun and told him to get out of his house, which he refused to do, right? So 3 days later, after that incident had taken place, he went, got a restraining order processed, but it didn't get accepted. So he was stuck without a restraining order. A few days after that, about 3 to 4 days after that, according to the Tiger King, which is a reality TV show based on this story on Netflix, he vanished, completely vanished out of thin air. A couple days after this restraining order wasn't processed completely, and his van was left at the runway of the municipal airport in the local area, and his keys were in the ignition of the van, and his plane was gone. He owned a small private plane that he had said that Carol Baskin had testified that he was going to Costa Rica with. Now, that plane was never found, and he was never found. So to this day, they still don't know where he is, and they still don't know where the plane is. Now, there are some conspiracy theories about how, she killed him for his multi-million-dollar fortune and put him in a meat grinder, fed him to the cats. There was a sewer drainage under the park that they own, the Big Cat Sanctuary, where they believe that he is thrown down under, but they haven't searched that yet. Her property is huge, so he might have been buried out there. But one of the other two major conspiracy theories that are revolved around this story is that he was pushed out of the plane on the way to Costa Rica, and they disposed of the plane by their means. Which, the meat grinder and the plane seem pretty good ideas for somebody who's trying to get a multi-million-dollar fortune in order to build a bigger Big Cat Sanctuary. It makes sense. So, now we're going to go to the argument against his murder. So Carol Baskin stated that to the reporters and officials that he had been suffering mentally and might have gotten lost when he flew out to Costa Rica and had a terrible accident. So you're telling me a self-made millionaire that has a ginormous fortune is just going to go crazy and have a terrible accident, and there's not going to be any signs of wreckage anywhere from where he took off to Costa Rica? No, that's not going to happen. You would find the plane. You would find the body. Somebody would. It's been years. Somebody would have found it. All right? So what she's saying doesn't really add up. And suffering mentally, man, even if he is suffering mentally, he wanted to get away from her. That's exactly why he put the restraining order up. If anything, not trying to be biased, but she's suffering mentally for the acts that she had committed onto him in order to get the restraining order put on her in the first place. All right? So, she also told authorities that Don Lewis had always flown under the radar. So there's a little radar. There's a section that you fly over, and that radar can pick you up, so they can see who's flying and what, and they can contact you and stuff. But if you fly under that specific amount, then you can't be detected. So she's saying that he flew under radar to avoid being detected, although no evidence of this plane or his crash has ever been recorded. So even if he did fly under radar, he would have been picked up or something like that. Exactly. So putting this all together, it's up to your imagination to whether or not you believe in this Carol Baskin conspiracy or not. Did she kill her husband Don Lewis, or did she not? Me personally, yeah, she killed him. 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 But that's up to you. That's not up to me. Carol Baskin killed her husband, whacked him. Can't convince me that it didn't happen. Can I convince you?